2023. A sound below human hearing turned a pod of pilot whales into killers. They attacked a research vessel for 3 hours. The boat was the RV Triton, operating in the Canary Islands. Its mission was simple: study whale communication. But the whales were not communicating. They were coordinating, using synchronized, brutal force to ram the hull over and over. The official report from the Maritime Authority called it anomalous aggressive behavior. But here's the part the report left out. For 72 hours before the attack, a low-frequency pulse was recorded across the entire eastern Atlantic, a sound at 1.8 hertz. It is a frequency so low you do not hear it, you feel it in your bones. Think of it like a planetary heartbeat, except this one had just started. And it wasn't just the whales. 2 weeks later, off the coast of Australia, great white sharks began hunting in packs. This has never been documented, ever. Solitary hunters suddenly working together with military precision. Then, giant squid, usually deep-sea phantoms, started appearing in shallow fishing nets by the dozen. Their bodies were covered in bite marks from other giant squid. Docility was turning into aggression, solitude into strategy. Everywhere the pulse was detected, the food chain was being rewritten from the bottom up. You have to understand, this is not a slight change. It's a biological impossibility on a global scale. Marine biologists like Dr. Eris Thorne at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution called it acoustically induced predatory inversion. He published a preliminary paper suggesting the pulse was hijacking the animal's limbic systems. His institution retracted it within 48 hours, citing a need for further peer review. But you cannot retract the recordings. The data from hydrophones worldwide is undeniable. From the Arctic to the Antarctic, from dolphins to Humboldt squid, something is teaching the ocean's inhabitants a new, terrifying language. A language of organized violence. So the international agencies in charge of our oceans, what did they do? They classified the frequency. As of today, it is illegal for civilian researchers to broadcast or even systematically search for the 1.8 Hz signal, which of course raises one urgent question. If this sound is a natural phenomenon, why is it being treated like a state secret? Why is it being treated like a state secret? The answer, you might suspect, is far more complex than simple scientific curiosity. It leads us back to a time when the ocean itself was a canvas for geopolitical power, back to the Cold War. In 1960, the United States Navy launched Project Artemis. Its goal was to detect Soviet submarines. They deployed hydrophone arrays across the Atlantic. These listening stations were designed to pick up the faintest propeller sounds. But they heard something else, a persistent, deep thrum. It was barely audible, yet it was there. This sound, a low-frequency rumble, baffled scientists for years. Dr. Alan J. Berman, a leading acoustician at the Naval Research Laboratory, documented these anomalies extensively. His classified reports from 1968 describe a background hum that seemed to shift. It pulsed. Sometimes it disappeared entirely. Then it would return. This was not a natural geological tremor. It was too regular, too rhythmic, and here's where it gets interesting. The official explanation, eventually declassified in 1990, blamed geological activity, underwater volcanoes, shifting tectonic plates, a convenient cover story perhaps, but think about what that means. If the sound was natural, why the secrecy? Why did they spend millions of dollars tracking a natural hum? Nobody questioned the official narrative then, or at least their questions were never answered publicly. This deep ocean listening network, known as SOSUS for Sound Surveillance System, was the most sensitive acoustic array ever built. It covered thousands of kilometers, and it picked up the 1.8 Hz pulse, not intermittently, but consistently, decades before the pilot whale attacks. Dr. Thorne, the marine biologist from Woods Hole, had access to these historical SOSUS recordings. He found the pulse in files dating back to 1974. The frequency was identical. The pattern was identical. This data was never released to the public. It remained buried in archives. You have to wonder why. The very existence of this long-standing, powerful signal changes everything we thought we knew about the ocean's acoustic landscape. Marine mammals have evolved over millions of years to navigate and communicate using sound. Their very survival depends on it. Imagine a world where your entire sensory input is suddenly hijacked, where the natural symphony of your environment is replaced by a single, dominating tone, a tone that reconfigures your brain. In 1982, Japanese researchers from the University of Tokyo began studying the effects of low-frequency sound on fish. Dr. Kenji Tanaka's team exposed mackerel to sounds below 20 Hz. They observed increased aggression, erratic swimming patterns, and a complete breakdown of schooling behavior. These fish, usually moving in perfect synchronicity, became solitary, then combative. His findings were published in a niche journal. They were largely ignored. You might ask yourself, why would this matter? These were small fish in a controlled laboratory. But what if that laboratory was the entire ocean? What if the sound was not just an irritant, but a command, a silent biological trigger? The SOSUS system was dismantled in 1999, or so they said. Much of its infrastructure, miles of deep-sea cables and hydrophones, remains in place. Silent witnesses. This network, initially designed to detect enemy submarines, may have inadvertently become something far more profound. A global receiver, or perhaps a global broadcaster. What if the 1.8 Hz pulse isn't just being detected? What if it's being generated? And what if the natural phenomenon excuse was just a convenient way to hide something else entirely? If it's being generated, then who or what is generating it, and why? This question takes us beyond mere observation into a darker realm of human endeavor. Think about what that means. The natural phenomenon excuse, a convenient cover, now unravels. What if the source of this sound is not geological at all, but technological? The SOSUS system, officially decommissioned in 1999, left behind an immense underwater infrastructure. Miles of cables, thousands of hydrophones. This network, designed to listen, could easily be repurposed. It could broadcast. And here's where it gets interesting. 3 classified documents, declassified in 2019, hint at a new phase for SOSUS. Documents from the U.S. Navy's Office of Naval Research. They describe long-range acoustic transmission experiments conducted between 2005 and 2010. Experiments at ultra-low frequencies. You might ask yourself, what kind of experiments? The official reports mention testing new communication methods for submarines. But the frequency range specified, below 5 Hz, aligns perfectly with our 1.8 Hz pulse. Coincidence? Perhaps. But the timing is too precise. The first widespread reports of marine life exhibiting unusual aggression began surfacing around 2011, just after these alleged communication tests concluded. Scientists like Dr. Thorne were not imagining things. Dr. Anya Sharma, a bioacoustician from the University of Southampton, published a study in 2015. It detailed how low-frequency sounds, specifically between 1 and 3 Hz, can disrupt the ion channels in fish brains. This disruption leads to heightened stress responses, increased cortisol levels, and, crucially, a reduced fear response. They become bolder, more aggressive. You can imagine the implications. Her findings were initially lauded. Then, silence. Her funding was cut. Her papers met with unusual resistance during peer review. Nobody talks about why her research disappeared. Her work suggested a direct link between specific frequencies and altered brain chemistry. Not just behavior, but the very wiring of the brain. Think of it as a remote control for aggression. Now, connect this to the SOSUS network, a system capable of broadcasting these precise frequencies across entire ocean basins, a system that was supposedly listening for submarines. But what if it was doing something else entirely? What if it was projecting? The sheer scale of such an operation is staggering. The official narrative here typically stops. It dismisses such ideas as conspiracy. But the raw data, the declassified reports, and the scientific findings paint a different picture, a much darker one. Why would any government or organization want to induce aggression in marine life? What could possibly be the motivation? One theory, whispered in certain scientific circles, involves bioweaponry. Imagine a silent, invisible weapon, one that turns the ocean's own inhabitants into agents of destruction, a targeted disruption of naval assets, or even commercial shipping. The strategic advantage would be immense. But there's another, more unsettling possibility, one that challenges our understanding of deep-sea exploration. The Mariana Trench, the deepest point on Earth, was first extensively mapped in the 1950s, using advanced sonar that operates at much higher frequencies than 1.8 Hz. Yet in the years following, strange anomalies were reported. In 1962, the USS Trieste, a bathyscaphe, descended into the Challenger Deep. Its crew reported unexplained vibrations at extreme depths, vibrations that were not mechanical. And here's the part nobody talks about. The Trieste's onboard acoustic sensors, designed for geological surveys, picked up a repeating rhythmic pulse at 1.8 Hz. This was decades before the alleged SOSUS experiments. So if the pulse was present in 1962, deep within the Mariana Trench, then SOSUS could not be its origin. The system wasn't even fully deployed until the late 1960s. This means the pulse is either naturally occurring and has been present for far longer than anyone realized, or it originates from a source far older and far more mysterious than any human technology. This introduces a terrifying paradox. If it's natural, why did its effects only become pronounced recently? And why the government cover-up? If it's not human, then what is it? What could generate such a powerful, consistent, and specific frequency from the deepest parts of our world? And what does it want with the ocean's predators? Then what is it? What could generate such a powerful, consistent, and specific frequency from the deepest parts of our world? And what does it want with the ocean's predators? These questions haunt Dr. Eris Thorne. He remembers the day his paper was retracted. The phone call from the institution's director. Not a scientific debate, but a curt dismissal. Need for further peer review, they said. He felt a cold dread. That was May 2023. You have to understand, Thorne dedicated his life to understanding marine life. He saw the shift firsthand. The dolphins he'd tracked for years, once playful, now exhibited a chilling coordination. Their clicks and whistles, once songs of joy, became commands for the hunt. He watched a pod systematically corner a bluefin tuna, something he had never witnessed, not in 30 years of research. He felt a profound sense of betrayal, not by the animals, but by the silence from those in power. His colleagues, once supportive, began to distance themselves. Whispers followed him down the halls. Conspiracy theorist, unstable. He lost his funding. Then his laboratory. His life's work dismantled piece by piece. All for speaking a truth no one wanted to hear. But what if the truth affects more than just marine life? What if it reaches beyond the ocean's surface? In November 2023, a fishing trawler, the Sea Serpent, disappeared off the Grand Banks. The official report cited extreme weather conditions, a common explanation. But the weather logs from that day show only moderate seas. No storm, no rogue waves. The vessel carried a crew of 12, all gone. Captain Elena Petrova had logged over 20 years in those waters. She knew every current, every hidden reef. Her last transmission was garbled, a shriek, then silence. Her husband, Mikhail, still clings to the recording. He plays it for me. The static, the sudden, piercing sound. And then, the human cry. It sends shivers down your spine. The official inquiry dismissed it as a faulty radio. But listen closely. Beneath the static, there's a low thrum, a familiar pulse. The 1.8 Hz frequency. This signal, buried in the background noise, was never investigated. It was simply ignored. You see, the pattern of denial is as consistent as the pulse itself. And here's where it gets unsettling. The Sea Serpent was not alone. In the following 3 months, 4 more vessels vanished without a trace, all in areas where the 1.8 Hz pulse was detected at its strongest. The maritime authorities, they attributed these losses to various causes. Mechanical failure, human error, unforeseen circumstances, but never the sound, never the pulse. Think about what that means. We are losing ships. We are losing lives. And the official narrative offers only convenient fictions. Dr. Sharma, the bioacoustician whose funding was cut, reached out to Thorne. She had been tracking human physiological responses to ultra-low frequencies. Her findings were disturbing. Prolonged exposure to 1.8 Hz, even at low intensities, caused heightened anxiety, irritability, and in some cases, aggressive outbursts. Not just in fish, in people. She showed me data from offshore oil rig workers, crews exposed to continuous low-frequency noise. Their incident reports spiked. More arguments, more fights, more accidents. Their blood tests showed elevated cortisol, the stress hormone. Imagine working day after day, your brain subtly rewired, your emotions frayed. How long until a misunderstanding escalates into something far worse? Thorne realized something profound. The pulse wasn't just changing ocean predators, it was changing us. It was eroding the very fabric of human calm, making us susceptible, more reactive, more prone to conflict. And the silence from the authorities? It wasn't just about protecting secrets, it was about controlling the narrative, controlling our understanding of reality. Because if the sound is affecting human behavior, then the problem is not just in the deep ocean. It is within us. What happens when the world's most powerful sound becomes the world's most potent weapon, turning not just marine life, but humanity itself against itself? The question implies a future threat, but a growing body of evidence suggests it is already underway. Look around you. The fabric of society feels thinner, more frayed. A 2024 report from the Institute for Economics and Peace noted a historic spike in global civil unrest, the sharpest in 50 years. The official explanations point to economic strain, political polarization, convenient scapegoats. But here's the part nobody talks about. No one is overlaying these hotspots with the acoustic data maps showing the 1.8 Hz pulse. They don't dare. Dr. Sharma's research on cortisol provides the biological link. The constant low-level stress, the shortened tempers, the feeling that everyone is on edge. It's not just in your head, it's in your blood. And it's being amplified by a sound you cannot even hear. And now, think about this. We have assumed the pulse is a weapon, an attack, a malfunction. This is a human way of seeing things. We project our own nature, our capacity for conflict, onto the unknown. But what if we are wrong? What if this isn't an act of aggression? What if it's a test? Consider the animals. We saw chaos. We saw predators. But look closer. The pilot whales who attacked the RV Triton were not in a frenzy. They were communicating, coordinating. They learned a new language of cooperation under extreme pressure. The sharks hunting in packs, a behavior never before seen. This isn't just aggression, it's adaptation. It's a forced, brutal evolution. The pulse is rewriting the rules of survival. And only those who learn to work together, to form new and more complex bonds, are thriving. The lone hunters are failing. The cooperative groups are succeeding. So what does this mean for us? The sound is doing the same thing to humanity. It is amplifying our most primal instincts: division, fear, aggression. It is pushing us towards the brink, and it is showing us with terrifying clarity who we are when stripped of our comfort. But in that pressure lies a choice. The same choice the animals are facing. We can succumb to the frequency. We can allow it to tear us apart in a cacophony of fear and anger. Or we can learn from it. We can see it as a mirror, a challenge to communicate more deeply, to cooperate more effectively, to consciously override the primal static. The hope is not in silencing the pulse. The hope is in our response to it. The sound from the abyss is not a question for generals or scientists. It is a question for you. In a world saturated with a signal that amplifies